Hey, do you have a nagging pain that you just can't figure out? Maybe you've been to the doctors, you've done all the tests, done the blood work, done the scans, and everything seems to come back normal, and you hear this. It's all in your head. Well, it's connected. Of course, your head's connected to the rest of your body. But what if we could figure that out? You see, it's not just all in your head. Now, let me be clear. You could have some physical problem, true. You could have some joint problem. You could have some bacteria or virus infection or something like that. So we want to go get checked out if it's a big problem like that. But that's the structural and biochemical component. We have this other component within us that seems to also express in the body, and that's our stuffed emotions. See, what happens when all those tests come back clear? And then you go home, you still have the pain or the digestion issue or whatever it may be, and you're still getting that signal. See, your body's not broken. It is sending you a signal that something important is going on. You might have heard this before. Pain is in the brain. So there's a perception that we need to be consciously aware of something. This is why the body's sending these signals to the conscious mind so we can make a decision and do something about it. In this video, we're actually going to decode what that signal is and figure out what the body's trying to say. And I'm going to give you actually some step-by-step processes that are going to help you start to break that connection through that emotional stress component and the physical manifestation of that stress. So stick around. Yes, your pain is real. It's not just physical. You're not just a physical being. You are structural, biochemical, emotional, electrical, and there's a spirit running that meat suit. Let's decode this stuff so we can complete our mission without all this pain and emotional baggage in the way, right? Well, we need to learn lessons. First we need to say this. Your pain is real. It's 100% real. You're not making it up. It's your perception. And it's your nervous system doing its job. It's feeding you that information so you can change something. Now, what we're talking about in this video is not necessarily a physical injury or a stomach bug or something like that. It's more of this unprocessed feeling of frustration, that exhaustion, that frustration, that feeling like you're trapped in the body and it seems to have turned on you. Remember, you've been to the doctor or you've been to other specialists and they can't figure it out. You know you better than anybody else. But when we have this confusion, it feels literally like we can't trust our body. And we don't want that. We want to be able to trust our body. You're the captain of the ship in there, and we need to learn to read the body properly and interpret these signals so that we can do something about it, like I said. Okay. It's easy to think of the mind and body as separate. That's the old school way of thinking. And that's why we ended up with so many different specialties in Western medicine, which is a good thing and a bad thing, because then we stop looking at the body as this holistic unit, you know? So if you have pain, something must be physically broken. That's not necessarily the truth. There's a huge body of research that confirms that what many have long suspected, okay? Physical pain and emotional pain are deeply connected in the brain. We know that. In fact, neuroscientists have actually found the same regions light up when you physically have pain and you have emotional distress like rejection or grief. Remember, your perception will influence things down line. So when we perceive events or a memory or something like that as a dangerous thing or something like rejection or like we're being put out of the village or we've lost someone, those are real emotions, but they're appropriate in the moment when the event is happening or when we're processing like loss or something like that. A lot of times we get it kind of distorted and we generalize and we jump to conclusions, and then we end up with the similar physical pain. So scientists have actually mapped out these same brain regions. When we think these thoughts, similar neural pathways fire up just like you had physical pain. So what's going on there? This isn't just a metaphor like when you hear phrases, those old metaphysical phrases like broken heart or gut wrenching, or even I hold my stress in my shoulders. That's a general way of saying I can't control my emotions. So when you think thoughts like that, your brain thinks it's a dangerous situation again. And of course, we've got these mechanisms within the nervous system that are going to take over and put us in fight or flight, run away. So we're either going to get angry or scared and do something about it. If that goes on too long, we can easily shut down into that third phase where we feel depressed and hopeless. These are natural ways that humans have adapted to their environment for eons. That's why we're still on the planet, because we have an unconscious mind and a nervous system that can take over in the moment and get us out of harm's way. The thing is, we tend to generalize again. Now that we know, we can actually override those signals and do something about it. This is why I'm here today talking about it, because I knew from a young age, if I had a headache and I thought about the headache, it would make it worse. Or how about this one? A little bit of stomach queasiness, more like anxiety in the morning before school. And Mom, I don't feel good today. I got to stay home from school. And what happens? We actually end up making ourselves sick. It's funny like that. I knew that from a young age. As I got into body work and kinesiology, that's what really shifted everything when I realized these emotional components were related to my back pain. I used to have a lot of back pain, and whenever I would stress deeply, that was the area that would fall apart. I did have a physical injury when I was young, and that was still a weak area. But isn't it funny that similar emotions related to those low back muscles, like not feeling supported or standing up for myself, things like that, those were emotions that were involved in the background I didn't even know. But whenever situations would come up and those similar emotions would fire up in the background, those muscles would go into spasm and I'd have the back pain again. What the heck? Then I was in the middle of a class and we were using reflex pathways and different reframed language to override that thought pattern, and the physical pain went away. Oh my God, get chills thinking about it today. That's why I do this stuff. So I guess that's when I had that aha moment, when I realized that I was causing this physical pain in the background by not processing something. And the physical pain was just actually my body speaking my mind and trying to let me know what I thought I had processed. I had not processed, actually stuffed and pushed it down into the body. And the body was trying to tell me that I hadn't dealt with my lessons, I hadn't dealt with my karma, and it was getting bigger and badder as it was coming back up to the surface. So how in the world does this actually work? How can a feeling create a real physical sensation? Well, the latest neuroscience actually gives us some incredible clues. It comes down to a crucial difference between sensing danger and suffering from it, right? So stress is inevitable. It's the suffering that we tend to ruminate and don't process things, or maybe we just don't have a strategy, or we don't know how to model someone that's done it and process that stuff, or we don't feel worthy of processing, or we just don't have a tool. And that's what we're here to do, is give you some tools. So how does it show up? Think of your nervous system like a smoke detector. Its job is to sense the smoke, right? And that's just raw information. It's just general information. And we have three main filters in our subconscious where we generalize information, and then we delete what we no longer fits the generalization, and we distort things from whatever distorted view or perception that we're living in the moment. You might get things a little bit wrong. So the raw information sets off the smoke detector. But then there's the loud blaring alarm that goes off, and that's the physical pain. What's going on here? That alarm is the suffering. It's the fear, the panic, the emotional response that tells you it's just a big catastrophic event and it's hopeless. It's not really the truth, it's just our quick perception. Recent research has identified specific pathways in the brain that are responsible for this alarm. When a danger signal travels to the brain, it actually splits. So we unconsciously pick up the info from our subconscious. Okay, the nervous system's out there with all its little feelers, all of your senses are picking up this information. And it senses some type of danger. And it splits the signal. It goes down one pathway down the sensory cortex into the brain, and another pathway involves neurons that produce a chemical called CGRP, and that goes straight into our amygdala. That's our emotional center. Okay, that's your brain's emotional hub. It's the blaring alarm. It's where it starts to take over muscle function and all times, things like that. And the studies that when scientists actually silenced that pathway that was creating that CGRP neurons in mice, the animals still sensed painful things, but they didn't learn from it. They didn't learn to fear or avoid it. So they just repeated the painful event. That's self-sabotage, humans. Does that sound familiar? So since they didn't learn from it, they had the sensation without the suffering, basically. This suggests that your brain has a dedicated circuit that can turn physical sensations into emotional anguish. And with chronic pain, the circuit can get stuck in the on position. Your original injury might be a long time ago. Like my physical pain actually sprained my right sacroiliac joint when I was 14 years old. And that would come and go, and it, but as I get into my adult life, I'm stressing over certain subjects around that, like money and feeling supported and standing up. That was the weak area that just kept showing up. So mine was kind of stuck on around those certain subjects, and that chronic pain just kept coming back up. Now, like I said, that was a long time ago, but the alarm was still stuck on. So my brain had learned a pattern of pain, and now it was creating it it was basically just turning into a habit. And what we know of neuroplasticity, neurons that fire together, wire together. These guys kept firing together. And neurons that don't fire together, if you stop doing the thing, you'll start to break apart those neural pathways. And it's hard to get that old habit back. So it was literally like this old habit. So I was kind of stuck in this negative, self-fulfilling prophecy feedback loop. Every time I would stress, I'd feel low back pain. Sometimes I'd have low back pain and I'd start stressing over the same emotions. It was so completely wired together. The info was going back and forth. Okay, if we get in this vicious cycle, it might start with that real injury or a period of high stress that's using the nervous system to protect you. So we do have muscles that turn off and turn on in times of fight or flight. So sometimes we have big emotional events and we feel the body in the stressful events, and that becomes the firing pattern as well. You feel the pain, and it's your brain's alarm system. That amygdala goes off. This triggers the fear, anxiety, and worry, and those emotions activate that fight or flight response, flooding your body with stress hormones and causing your muscles to tense up. That tension can create more pain, which sends more signals back to the amygdala, which sounds the alarm even louder. So we've got this feedback loop going over and over and over. On top of this, our thoughts pour gasoline on it. If we haven't reframed them and learned how to process that stuff or learned the lesson around that old thing and let it go, then we're just constantly adding fuel to the fire. Oftentimes we might think, this will never get better. And that's when we start to really break apart the mind and the body component, and we think that our body is separate because we're thinking about it and it's not cooperating, and it's hard to trust it if we don't know what it's going to do from moment to moment. We feel disempowered, Things like my life is ruined because of this. These thoughts aren't just negative thinking, though. They directly activate that emotional pain circuit again and making even more sensitive to the pain. So we become really hypersensitive to any situation that resembles that emotional event. Kind of crazy. but it's built in there to protect us. It's kind of neat, but it doesn't feel good when we don't know what to do with it. You're literally kind of like training your brain to become an expert at feeling pain. It's like a habit. Like I said, more and more neural pathways start to get built around that subject, and it becomes the thing we think about the majority of our day. To make things worse, chronic pain can hijack your brain's reward system, suppressing dopamine, so we have no pleasure or motivation anymore. This is why so many people with chronic pain also experience like a deep loss of joy. We mentioned the fight or flight mechanism. As we go on too long, that third ventricle of our vagus nerve kicks in and we go into a depressive state. And then those emotions come along with that, or the emotions push us into that. Either way, it doesn't feel good and we get into that shutdown mode. And that cycle just keeps repeating on that, just stuck on basically. Pain, 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 pain. Hey, if this is starting to make sense, go ahead and hit that like button and share it with somebody. This is how we can get this information to more people. We can help more people with some of these tools. So how do we get out of the loop and begin to decode what's happening? Not by fighting the pain or ignoring it. We do it by changing our relationship with it and our perception of it. It starts with listening to your body. We need to be good stewards of this temple that we're in and look around and listen and feel. So we need to be really paying attention. And here's a simple 3-step process that we can use to move this stuff. Okay, like I said, the first step is we need to become curious and be the observer inside and watch and listen and feel for the body. What we call from NLP, we call it dissociation. So we can stand back from it from a moment and dissociate like we're watching ourselves from afar. And that helps us pull away from the pain and the perception of the emotion for a moment and have a level mindset as we look at it. So we want to become the observer of the pain and not its victim. Okay? This is practice called somatic tracking that we can use, or I like to call it just self-awareness or being the observer. And this helps us create our locus of control. That's true empowerment. When you can control that perception of the pain and the emotion and step back for a moment and calm the mind down and look from the inside at yourself. Okay, instead of tensing up, we're going to gently turn our attention inside with no judgment. I want you to turn that awareness towards the sensation in your body. Where do you feel it? Now ask this question, okay? If this sensation had a feeling, what would it be? Stick with it. If you don't know, ask it again. You do know. If you don't know how to articulate the name of an emotion, like I did early in my practice, I had to get a couple of dictionaries and look that stuff up. Feel free to get a list of emotions and look them up. It's beneficial to name what you're feeling so you can learn from it. Okay, so we're looking at the body part from inside and describing the feeling. What is that feeling? There was a famous Dr. John Sarno who used to teach this, taught that physical pain can sometimes act as a distraction from powerful unprocessed emotions. There's a great book out there. I mean, Emotions Buried Alive Never Die. That's the truth. Unprocessed stuff will remain in the body until it's processed. Okay, now by simply acknowledging that potential link, we've already started to break the pattern because we've already started to look at it from another perspective and believe that when you process the emotions, you'll actually clear these pathways of communication back and forth so we can update that response. Okay, step 2. This is where we're going to interrupt or break the pattern. In NLP, we call it a pattern interrupt. Remember, anytime a neural pathway is firing, there's a strategy. It goes in a certain order. Everything has a strategy. Starts at the process and ends in the result. Somewhere along that line, you can do something and scratch that record deep enough so it messes with the song and becomes a pattern interrupt. There's a lot of ways to do it. When we come from a conscious awareness standpoint, like we're trying to do with this exercise. We're watching the body, and we're going to do something to interrupt that pattern. Once you've observed the signal, next step is manually turn off that brain's alarm system. So the fastest way to do this is with your breath. You can do it with your breath. We can do it with peripheral awareness with your eyes. I love that one. That helps. We know that when we look from peripheral vision, we're in an alpha state. That's a nice calm learning state. If you want to learn something about your body, you can go with that. We're going to add 2 things to this step. We're going to do a nice big belly breath. Okay. At the same time, you're going to choose something forward, a spot on the wall to look at. And while you're looking at that, start to become aware of your peripheral vision out here at the same time while you're breathing. Thinking about that body part, thinking about that emotional connection. This is going to help us get into a parasympathetic state, that rest and digest state. So we're thinking about the problem, but now we're transitioning into a calm nervous system response. So we're putting a big scratch in the record, like I said. Okay, so we're holding that position, taking about 5 good breaths, maybe even gaining some lesson around that unprocessed stuff. Good. So that's just one technique. We're not done. So you can add to that any kind of other work. You can add some EFT tapping. You can add some NLP reframing work or submodality mapping things. You can use some kinesiology muscle testing and meridian work. We actually got a really good course down below. I'll link down below, our intro to behavior kinesiology, which covers a lot of that stuff. Okay, number 3, the final step, we're going to rewrite the story with some new information. We're going to reframe that thought pattern, basically. So we're going to challenge that original story that is attached to our stress reaction. Okay. Remember, we have those pathways. We're trying to break them apart. So if you hear this in your speech, I want you to begin to reframe the language internally, not just externally. Your unconscious mind cannot process a negation. So when I think I don't have back pain, I still think about back pain. But if I think about having a strong, flexible back, I'm only thinking about having a strong, flexible back. So listen for your language. You might not get it right the first time, but if you can begin to give yourself some leeway and start to use some of this positive framed language, it's pretty amazing how chemicals start to follow suit in the brain and down chain happens and the emotions start to process, the nervous system switches function, and everything goes into strength and flexibility and relaxation. So hear yourself. If I used to say, my back hurts, of course it hurts. It's the real thing, but it's not what I want. I want it to end up in strength and flexibility. Some people might think my back's broken. I'll never be able to play with my kids anymore. I've worked with a lot of older clients that's actually their goal. They want to play with their grandkids. And so we end up reframing the statement without denying your actual experience. We know where you're starting, but it's pretty amazing what starts to follow when you change your thought. Instead of saying things like that, my back is fragile, my back is not strong, my back is broken, something's wrong with it, start to use phrases like my back is strong, it's flexible, I can stand up for myself, I have integrity, I have a backbone. Anything that sounds strengthening, basically. If that's too far of a reach to begin with, sometimes we just need to actually be willing to change. So we can start there in a gentle way. Instead of saying things like, I'll never be able to play with my kids or my grandkids, say things like, my back has this condition now that I'm working on. You know that you're in the middle of something, but you're working on strengthening it. If there's an emotion component and you know what it is now, maybe there's a discussion you might want to have with the person that needs forgiveness from you, or you to them, or you to yourself. Maybe there's action steps, literally. Maybe there's just a reframing of the situation that happened a long time ago and acceptance. Everything goes through a grief cycle when we feel rejected or we feel like we've lost something. And maybe you're just stuck in the middle of that. So reframing it where I'm getting better, I'm working on it, is better than I'm broken and I'm not working on it. Okay, every time you do this, you actually are going to actually start a new thinking pattern attached to that file in the brain and those neural nets that are originally attached to the physical pain and the emotional component. So we're breaking the pattern. If you can do it in the moment, great. Even when this stuff is not happening, if you can continue using that language and the breathing technique and the awareness and the peripheral vision, you're going to really override those pathways. And it's pretty rare that it comes back as long as we have gotten our deep lesson. In conclusion, pain that persists without a clear medical reason is not a sentence. It's actually a sign from your body. It's actually doing its job. It's actually really doing its job. I mean, every problem that we have has a strategy. Like I said, starts at the beginning and ends up in either success or problem. So you're not broken. Your body's actually just trying to send you signals, and sometimes we just don't have the tool to override those signals. So this big communication that's coming from your own body asking for attention and understanding, it's often a sign that your nervous system is stuck on that high alert. Yep. And that you have some kind of unprocessed emotions in the background and you need to feel safe, or at least the perception of feeling safe, and do something about that. By learning to decode these signals, though, you can easily reprogram that stuff and change the pattern. If you want to learn more about this stuff, like I said, we do have a course down below. We'll link that. Need any more coaching or anything like that? Do online coaching or in the office in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Love to see you there. And if you haven't followed the channel yet, go ahead and follow that. Share the video, and we'll see you in the next one.